welcome everyone. Happy start to this spring semester. Happy Friday. Happy end to the first tedious week of nightmare start of semester. Thank you to everyone who's joining us, postdoc students, faculty, colleagues, friends, fans of Dr. Hussein Hassan. It's absolutely wonderful to kick off the spring semester series of research seminars with our own Dr. Hussein Hassan, who has been extremely busy this semester, busier than ever, because he's taken on a new role at the university as well. So thank you very much for finding the time to talk about research that you have disseminated across the Arab region in various forums. So we're very lucky that you are sharing with us your up-to-date research on food waste. And you have a fascinating title for today, which is Food is Never Waste. I love it. And I'm curious about it. And your subtitle for today is A Wake-Up Call to alleviate food insecurity in the Arab world. So this is quite a regional approach to looking at food security, if I'm not mistaken. And your abstract is absolutely fascinating. I have read the reports that you have produced about food waste across the Arab world, and I know you're the absolute expert on this. So we are honored to have you. I am thrilled that you're presenting the first seminar for the School of Arts and Sciences. When you're ready, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Dean, for the kind words, and thank you, Dr. Harmanani, for arranging this talk. So I'll share the PowerPoint. Hello, everyone. Thank you for being with us in this seminar. As Dr. Jnainati said, it's a Friday, it's noon time almost. So I appreciate having you with us. So my talk will be about food waste. It's an area that I'm passionate about. I've been working as activist and researcher in the field for the last 6 or 7 years. The title of my talk would be Food is Never Waste, a wake-up call to alleviate food insecurity in the Arab world. Let's first explain what food waste is, because to majority of people, food loss and food waste are the same, while in fact they are not. Food loss is the wastage that takes place during the farming, during the storage, distribution, and processing of food. While food waste is the wastage that takes place at the consumption level. So, for example, in retailers, supermarkets, hospitality sector, and households. So, in Arabic, we call food loss فاقد الغذاء, food waste هدر الغذاء. So, my area of research is in the food waste. Again, the wastage that takes place at the consumption level. In households, in the hospitality sector, for example, restaurants, hotels, and in supermarkets. If you look at this graph, by the year 2050, the amount of food produced will not be enough to feed everyone. This is an alarming figure because it will show us that at some point in time, we will no longer have enough food. And food security is about availability, accessibility, and use of food. So the availability of food will be at stake by 2050. So one way to address this challenge is to reduce food waste, because you'll see in a bit some shocking numbers about food waste worldwide, with special focus on the Arab world. Now, food waste can exist for many reasons. It has to do with the socioeconomic status, shopping attitudes, insufficient knowledge, errors in packaging, health misconceptions about leftovers, and so on. Worldwide, there are around 1 billion people who are hungry, yet we waste 1/3 of the food we produce. Here are quick facts about food waste. So, with the food waste that we have worldwide, we can feed 3 billion people, while in fact we have 1 billion hungry people. So, in other words, addressing the issue of food waste can solve the hunger issue. When it comes to dissipation of food, food waste is a global issue. It affects both developing and developed countries. In Europe, food wasted can feed 200 million people. In Latin America, the wasted food can feed 300 million people. And food waste has environmental consequences, because food waste is organic, and when it is not properly treated, it results in emission of gases. So if food loss and waste was a country, it would be number 3 in the world in terms of gas emissions after China and the States. So it's not only about food security, it's about environmental degradation. If we look at the food losses and waste per capita per year, we can see that in developed countries, the waste is mostly at the consumer level, at the household. On the other hand, in developing countries, it's more of food loss, because in developing countries, they don't have proper storage facilities for crops. They don't have enough expertise in dealing with diseases at the farming sector. So that's why you can see that the food loss is more evident in developing countries. Among food products, fruits and vegetables, roots and tubers have the highest wastage rates of any food. Unfortunately, at the retail level, large quantities of food are wasted just because they don't look appealing. That's why a campaign in the UK was launched recently called Love Your Food. So any ugly food, any apple that doesn't have the best shape will still be sold at a discounted price to encourage people buying these ugly crops, because those ugly crops have the same quality, the same nutrients, they just don't look perfect. So it's important at the supermarket level to make use of those sort of ugly crops. In September 2015, the United Nations adopted the Sustainable Development Goals. We have 17 goals, among them Goal 12.3, which states that by the year 2030, we need to have the food waste at the retail and consumer levels and reduce food losses along production and supply chains. So for the food waste part, The SDG 12.3 is very clear. By 2030, we need to reduce it by 50%. Now, when it comes to food waste, we have two international agencies that are tackling this topic. I mean the food wastage in general. Food and Agriculture Organization tackles the food loss because, after all, FAO targets the farming sector more. However, the UN Environment Programme, or UNEP, tackles the food waste. So food loss is part of 12.3.1 as Sustainable Development Goal, and food waste 12.3.2. Some shocking numbers from the Arab world. Per person, food loss and waste in the Arab world exceeds 200 kilograms per year. And if you look at databases, only 2.5% of the food waste research was done in the Arab world. So there is a huge lack in numbers and research on food waste in the Arab world. In fact, 10 out of 22 Arab countries don't have a single research article on food loss and waste. 44% of the food at the pre-consumption is lost, while 34% is wasted at or during consumption. So in other words, in the Arab world, we waste a third of the food that we produce. Bahrain has one of the highest rates of food waste in the world. In Saudi Arabia, in Mecca, the food wasted at an average wedding can feed 250 hungry people. For example, in Riyadh, a study was done on resident students, and it was found that 40% of the dinner meals are wasted, 23% of the lunch meals are wasted. Egypt Air flights waste up to 51% of the food served. This is a recent report by UNEP. It shows that Lebanon is number 3 or 4 in the Arab world. We waste 105 kilogram per person per year. Compared to Russia, 33 kilograms per person per year. So in Lebanon, we waste around 3 times more food than Russia per person per year. In the States, it's around 60 kilograms per person per year. Bahrain is number 1, followed by Iraq, then Saudi, then Lebanon. A study in Jordan showed that university canteens waste 13% of the average meal size. In Qatar, on a university campus, it was found that for each 1 meal sold, there is 1 meal wasted. Even in hospitals, we do waste food. In Saudi Arabia, around 1/3 of the food presented to patients is wasted. In Kuwait, 60% of households reported that they regularly waste food. In order to target this issue, we need to develop what we call a baseline. So each country should have a baseline. In other words, to know how much food waste they produce, to characterize this food waste in order to know the nature of it. Once you know the nature of the food waste, you can come up with potential use. For example, as animal feed, or to compost, or to extract nutrients out of it. But without having a baseline, we cannot really do any interventions. Unfortunately, in the Arab world, only Saudi Arabia established a baseline last year. United Arab Emirates is working on it now. In Lebanon, we are trying, and when I say we, it's me and my colleague at AUB, Dr. Muhammad Abyad. We are trying to do the baseline in Lebanon, while in Saudi Arabia or UAE, it's the government who does it. But unfortunately, in Lebanon, we need to rely on our own resources. United Nations Environment Program has a protocol to measure the baseline. In the Arab world, we do have efforts to mitigate food waste, and this table I prepared it as part of a report that we issued recently with UNEP on the state of food waste in West Asia. So different countries have different initiatives, different efforts. Those efforts can be done by the civil society, by the government, NGOs. In Lebanon, for example, we have two NGOs that are highly active when it comes to food waste. We have the Lebanese Food Bank, which I'm proud to be part of it, and Food Blessed. Both try to direct any food waste from the hospitality and supermarkets sector to the people in need. Even in many Arab countries, we do have legislations on food waste. And in Lebanon, we do have a law. It was issued last year on food waste. Unfortunately, it hasn't been implemented yet because it is waiting for the المراسيم التطبيقية. It's still, as we say in Arabic, ink on paper. It's not implemented yet. So as you can see, we do have legislations for the food waste in Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Lebanon, UAE, Iraq, Jordan, Oman, and Palestine. Food waste was affected during COVID-19 in different ways. Since, especially in the beginning, we had the lockdowns, so there were fewer visits to hotels, restaurants, and canteens. So in other words, the food waste was less. But at the same time, the hospitality sector, HoReCa stands for hotels, restaurants, and catering and caterers. The food that they have on stock was left to degrade because they weren't sure if they donate this food or they keep it, as the picture was not clear at that time regarding the duration of the lockdown. So in the HoReCa sector, we did have less food waste due to fewer visits, but at the same time, we had more waste due to the degradation of the food items on stock. In the beginning of pandemic, we all had the panic buying. So people were running to get large quantities of foods, and eventually many of these foods expired and we had to waste them. Online shopping tempers impulse food purchases. So when you buy food online, you are tempted to buy more and more, and this will result in higher food waste. During COVID-19, we shifted to at-home meal preparation because, again, we were in quarantine and we were having the lockdown. So the food that we made at home during COVID-19 was staying from one day to the other, so we made use of the leftover. However, those who didn't cook before, they wasted food while learning how to cook. Many people didn't try cooking before. Due to COVID-19, they started cooking. and in the beginning of their cooking journey, they wasted food. Students returning home, they left food items in their residences, and of course, these food items were left to spoil. Now, this is the best approach to address food loss and waste, according to the World Resources Institute. First of all, we need to target the problem. In Lebanon, we all know that we have food waste. Then we need to do the baseline. We need to measure, to quantify and qualify the problem in order to act. So this is the best approach: target, measure, and act. In Lebanon, we are still now in the measurement phase. We're carrying out studies on quality and quantity of food waste in order to act. The action needs to target the different stakeholders. So we're talking about households, restaurants, catering companies, hotels, hospitals, and supermarkets. There are many approaches to reduce food loss and waste, and they were found to be effective in different countries of the world. And we are trying to implement them in Lebanon as soon as we finish the qualification and quantification of food waste. As I mentioned before, we issued a report for the United Nations Environment Program. It was drafted by Dr. Muhammad Abyad at AUB and myself. It was entitled State of Food Waste in West Asia. Also, our nutrition program is very active in food waste research. These are selected articles that we published in the last 4 years in top journals. We target mainly the households and the restaurants. And in the nutrition program, we have now a student under the supervision of Dr. Lama Matar. The student is assessing the attitudes and behaviors of the Lebanese population in terms of food waste during COVID-19 and the current economic crisis. Let me give you main highlights of what we found in Lebanon from our studies. The first study was about the attitudes and behaviors shaping household food waste generation, lessons from Lebanon. We recruited 1264 households from different areas. We found out that employment, education, number of household members, and income affected food waste volume. In general, when the person is employed, they tend to order food from the restaurants, and this will result in leftovers, which are usually wasted. However, unemployed people or people who work from home tend to cook. And when you cook, any leftover can be consumed the other day. So food waste is more prevalent among employed people who don't cook at home. Education, the more educated you are, the more likely to get higher position at work, the more likely you become busy. Therefore, you wouldn't cook at home. You rely on food orders from restaurants, resulting in food waste. As the household members increased, the food waste increased because when you have a big family, the mother or whoever in charge of cooking will tend to make more food, which will end up being wasted. Income is affected, affects as well food waste volume, because after all, income and employment are directly related. Practices such as eating out frequently and buying best offers were shown to increase food wastage. When you go to the supermarket, you always get attracted to offers. you may get food items that you don't actually need, and these items will be left to spoil. We found out that beliefs such as feeling guilty decreased food waste generation, and this is important to highlight. People who are environmentally aware, people who are religious, and this is something I will address in a bit, waste food less because they have this guilt feeling. Now, in villages, in rural areas, the food waste was significantly lower because in villages, people cook, they keep leftover till the other day. If they have a big quantity of food, they share it with their family members, with their cousins, with their neighbors. So in villages, dealing with leftovers is easier than in urban areas. Another study that we published recently was about post-consumer food waste generation while dining out. We recruited 222 restaurant managers in Beirut, and we surveyed them about food waste generation. Also, we measured the plate food waste in order to, as I told you before, to start working on a baseline in Lebanon. So at the end of the visit to restaurant by clients, after they left, we went to the table and collected the waste. We found out that around 1.6 tons of plate food waste are generated per year in the restaurants, while in Lebanon we have more than 65% of people insecure. We have a garbage crisis, yet we waste more than 1.6 tons of waste per year. This is in Beirut only. Our study was done in Beirut. Now, in this regard, restaurants in many cases cannot donate food. If the food is not safe, you cannot donate it. If, for example, a plate of hummus was partially consumed by clients, you cannot donate the remaining amount because, you know, we have food safety issues here. But in many cases, especially in Lebanese restaurants where we have the meza, we always have items that we didn't actually touch. So those items on the table can be donated for sure. Lebanese cuisine restaurants were found to generate 34 kilograms of organic waste per day, more than restaurants that serve international cuisine, because again, Lebanese restaurants are very generous in terms of portions and in terms of meza. Type of cuisine, kind of service, menu planning were significantly associated with food waste generation. Another study we did on Lebanese restaurants only to see the drivers and determinants of food waste generation. We recruited around 500 clients in restaurants from Beirut. We found out that gender, age, and marital status did not affect food waste generation. We found out that when Lebanese people go to low or high price restaurants, they waste significantly more than the middle range restaurants. Because when you go to a cheap restaurant, you tend to over order. And when you go to expensive restaurant, it means you are rich. So you can afford, impressing people with you at the table with more food. So that's why we have more food waste in low and high price range restaurants. As the number of diners per table increased, food waste decreased significantly. And it was found that when people ordered shisha, argili, alcohol, more food waste was generated. Because when you order argili or alcohol during any meal, you tend to stay longer in the restaurant. And when you stay longer, you tend to order more food. You tend to order desserts, fruits, and so on. So ordering argili and alcohol while dining out contributed significantly to more food waste. An interesting study that we finished recently, and it was accepted, now it is in press. We wanted to see how religion and religiosity affected food waste generation in Lebanon. You know, in Lebanon, we have many religions, people with different religiosity scores. So it was interesting to us to see how this affected food waste. So we interviewed around 900 restaurant diners. And at the end of their visit to the restaurant, we collected the leftovers and weighed them. We found out that Christian diners weigh significantly less than Muslim diners. Okay, so Muslim diners weigh significantly more food waste than Christian diners. And there is a religiosity score that we used to assess the level of religiosity, tadayyun, among the participants. We found out that among Christians and Muslims, the higher the religiosity score, the less the food waste. And this is important for future interventions to نلعب على وتر religiosity in order to reduce food waste generation among these people, because these people, as we say in Arabic, كتير بيخافوا من Allah. They have this guilt feeling, so they tend to waste less food. Muslims wasted more than Christians while dining in restaurants serving Lebanese and non-Lebanese. So in other words, our future intervention should target Muslims. Christians are doing fine in terms of food waste. When we look at experiences in different countries, these are lessons that are worth to share. Awareness is a start. Stakeholders must be motivated. There is no silver bullet for food waste. It's an accumulation of efforts from NGOs, research centers, governments. Different countries require different interventions. There is no, again, one intervention that pass partout. You need to assess the food waste behaviors and generation in each country to select the best intervention, and collaboration between actors is crucial. These are take-home messages, simple steps on a personal level to reduce food waste. First of all, always check what you have. This is called a first in, first out, or first expires, first out. So open your closet once per week, check what items you have. If you find an item that is about to expire, move it to the front so that you use it before expiry date. When you throw any food, assess what you're throwing. Because, for example, if you have tomatoes that are of very poor quality, instead of throwing tomatoes, you can squeeze them to get a very tasty juice, or you can make use of those tomatoes in making soups. Always check what you throw, because in many cases we throw food that we can actually make use of. Always plan your meals and cooking practices around the items that you have and about to expire. For example, I always teach my students in one of the courses, bread. We waste lots of bread in Lebanon. In France, they have this dessert called pain perdu. Pain perdu was originally made from stale bread, the poor quality bread. So we can do the same. we can make pain perdu with the low quality bread we have at home. So in other words, let's always think about what we're wasting and try to make use of it. Whenever you want to cook, it's important to have a plan to follow recipes, because when you follow recipes, you can tell about the number of portions. So, for example, if you're following a recipe that generates 10 portions and you need only 5 portions, you can simply divide all the ingredients by 2. Always check the number of portions for each recipe in order to cook what is just enough. Leftovers can be shared with friends and family or kept till the next day. In case you don't like to eat the same food over 2 days, you can freeze this food for future use. I know we have the electricity issue in Lebanon, which may not encourage this practice, but let's at least try to make use of the leftovers. Now there is a worldwide trend to go for plant-based meals, because if we want to waste food, let's waste plant-based food. Why? Because animal-based food products require lots of environmental resources. For example, meats. The meat requires that the cow eats grass, drink water. So any meat-based food had a negative impact on the environment. So if we want to waste for any reason, wasting plant-based meals will have less consequences on the environment. These are selected references for what I presented. I hope I didn't exceed my time, and I'm here to answer any questions that you have. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hassan. Very insightful, very interesting talk. Dean Janetti lost her connection, so hopefully she'll be back in a bit. So in the meantime, we're going to open the floor for Q&A, and you have the first question from Claudia. Claudia, go ahead.
Hi, Hussein. Thank you.
Hi, Claudia.
Very interesting info, but no, thank you for doing this at lunchtime. I'm really hungry. I have a few questions. One is simple. When you measured religion, was it more of a demographic or psychographic, as in, do they practice their religion, or is it just, are you a Christian or a Muslim? And second, I have an idea. I'm sure you've thought about it, but maybe we can collaborate. I'm going to throw in communication in here. We have a lot of students who are excellent in public awareness campaigns. They're pretty good in using social media, much better than us, at least than me. And these are our undergrads, but we also have a graduate student who's an illustrator. She did a project for one of my classes about media literacy, but she's so good at just drawing something and creating characters, and this could be done over a period of time. So we have a good team, and I'm sure students would love to do something like this, because all these tips that you gave, I don't know how many people know them, so maybe this would be a good idea. And if you like it, maybe we can see if there's a grant we can apply for. Anyway, that's all. Thank you.
Thanks, Claudia.
Thank you so much, Claudia. I fully agree. And after all, in order to disseminate any intervention, you need experts in media and multimedia, and we need definitely your support in this. At some point, once we know about the quality and quantity of our waste, we need to come up with interventions. And at this point, we need you big time to make sure that our findings and our efforts will not only be directed towards publications, but also towards mitigating the food waste generation in the country. Now, when it comes to religiosity, so it's not only about asking whether the participant is Christian or Muslim. there is the religiosity score, which is about a set of questions to see how close you are to God, how frequently you practice religion, how religion is important to your life, and at the end you will get a score. The higher the score, the more religious you are. So this is how we assess the religiosity of participants.
Thank you, Hussein. Hussein, we have one question from Dr. Haber on the chat, and he was
Yes,
wondering in terms of the impact of the current crisis on food waste.
yes.
That was the first
I'm
question, actually.
curious.
He had two,
Oh,
actually.
okay. Let me open the. Yeah. By the way, what Dr. Diab is proposing is completely valid. Ali, which is an Egyptian dessert, is based on bread, so we can make use of our poor quality bread by making Ali or fatte. Next time you make Dr. Diab, please bring us some. So Dr. Haber is asking, I'm curious to know about the economic status of the Lebanese diners you surveyed. Yes. Thank you, Dr. Haber. So what we did, we went to Zomato when it existed. It's no longer there. We checked the price ranges of the restaurants and we categorized them into low price, medium price, high price. Asking about the income is a bit sensitive, especially when you are sitting with people at the table. No one would like to reveal their income in front of friends or family members. So that's why asking about the income was a bit challenging. So we relied on the classification of the restaurants to tell about the socioeconomic status of the diners.
Yeah,
Mr. Gabi Salemi sent me a message about how they can support. Mr. Salemi is the director of hospitality at LAU. In fact, we had in mind to contact you, so thank you for bringing it up. Also to assess the food waste in our cafeterias, and this is something we really need your help with. Because once we know how much food we waste in our cafeterias, we can again go back to the communications program to come up with interventions at LAU in order to make our students waste less food. So definitely we need the hospitality department at LAU to reduce the food waste production on campus.
thanks. Any other comments, questions for Dr. Hassan? None?
Dr. Haber has another question about the political background, if socialist or communist. Yes, yes, we
Actually,
did. We
actually,
didn't
Hussein,
think of it.
actually, Hussein, I have the same comment in terms of a social or a class issue. That is, somehow I thought that food waste could be a class issue rather than a religion issue. That is, people actually who come maybe from the city tend to waste more food actually, while people actually who would come from maybe villages or mountains probably tend to be more careful in terms of food. I'm not sure if that's
Yeah,
if
it's true. It's true, and we found it in our study that urban areas waste more food than rural areas. I think one reason also the religiosity. Usually in rural areas, people are more conservative, more religious. So, in addition to the fact that they tend to share their leftovers or extra food with family and friends. But as a political background, it's an interesting point. We didn't really check it, but I think yes, because if you look, for example, at the waste Russia versus the States, in Russia it's around 30 kilogram per person per year. In the States, it's 60 kilogram per person per year. So yeah, I think the political system of the country may affect the food waste generation. So thank you for bringing it up. And I agree with Rawan about social media, and this is something to be considered as part of the interventions to target the young generation, and even involving influencers, artists, to reach out to as many people as possible about food waste. And let me give you a personal experience. During my wedding in 2016, I informed Lebanese Food Bank to send their truck at the end of the wedding, because back then in 2016 we used to make buffets in weddings, the golden years. So we really had food that is completely safe, completely tasty. Uh, Otherwise, it would have been wasted. So the Lebanese Food Bank has a refrigerated truck. They can come to weddings to collect all safe leftovers. And this is something I personally encourage all my friends to do it. They didn't know that this option existed, and I'm mentioning it now to tell you that there is an option of dealing with Lebanese Food Bank to send their refrigerated truck to any wedding, to any occasion where there is food. They will do the assessment of the leftover and decide if it's fit for consumption by needy people or not. So awareness is the key, indeed.
Okay. So any other comments, questions for Dr. Hassan? Okay. Okay, so if no other comments, if you have no other comments or questions, Hussein, I'd like to thank you for
Thank
taking
you so
time
much for
and for this
arranging
amazing
this.
presentation. Thank you, I appreciate it. Have a wonderful day and looking forward to hear more about your work and your research. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a great
Good
day.
weekend. Thanks. Bye-bye.